Hey everybody, welcome back to another Steelers practice update from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Day one of OTAs here on the south side at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. I'm Brian Batko, joined by my fellow beat writer Ray Fittipaldo. And Ray, this is kind of the bed the Steelers have made for themselves this offseason. The most talked about player, well, I guess at least by us on this video, but I'm sure we're not the only ones, is someone who's not employed by this team right now. He's not on this team. He's not on the roster. They gave us a sheet with almost 90 names on it. There's no Aaron Rodgers, but he still looms over this offseason. That is the dynamic the Steelers have created. Perception, reality, it kind of feels like there's one guy and then everybody else, which is only going to get weirder if he does show up at some point.
Yeah, it's funny. Almost every interview today was like, hey, how's your offseason going? How's this going? What do you think about this Aaron Rodgers?
What's going on at quarterback?
Let's just get down to what really matters here. And whether you're talking to veterans, you're talking to younger guys, that's the storyline that looms over this football team. We're 6 weeks out from training camp, and they still don't have an answer. Now, it was interesting, Brian. A lot of the guys caught themselves. They said, when he gets here or if he gets here. We all know it's going to happen. It's going to happen eventually. We just don't have the timeline.
Barring a last-second change of heart, you never know. And as always, this is brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci, mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them now for a free consultation. And you're right, Ray. I mean, it does kind of feel inevitable. I guess there's a non-zero chance that he wakes up one day and decides that he doesn't want to play football anymore. But that would be a surprise, I think, to everybody. And from the sounds of the players that you talked to today after OTA number one, it's the same deal. Mason Rudolph was here. He did a big scrum interview as well, talking about how he was comfortable here. He said he hadn't been in contact with Rodgers, which I don't know why he would be. They don't have any past history that I know of. And he said it's been good to throw to DK Metcalf at various phases of the offseason. So as much as people might be getting annoyed by this and might be saying, why are you talking about this? There's so many other storylines. There's the wide receiver group. There's Troy Fautanu and Broderick Jones. There's a defense that has a bunch of new pieces. Every team starts with the quarterback, and nobody other than Art Rooney II himself, the president of this organization, has said it's about finding a quarterback for this group.
Yeah, and listen, it's going to be that way until he signs or until we get the answer that he's not coming here. But one constant throughout this entire offseason has been the faith in Mason Rudolph. If for some reason Aaron Rodgers does not come here, all these guys, from the front office to the coaches to the players, they really believe in him after what he did at the end of the 2023 season. He's in year 7 now. 6 of those have been with the Steelers. So there's a comfort level there that if something strange does happen and Aaron Rodgers cannot be this team's starting quarterback, people believe in Mason Rudolph taking over the reins if that does happen.
Do you feel like the Rodgers thing is a distraction now that we're actually here? Most of these guys are back in the building, and like you said, kind of first day, and they're getting questions from beat writers and columnists about what's the upstairs thinking right now with the most important position in the team.
But it was going to happen today. We're not going to come back tomorrow and ask those same questions. The only scenario is if you come back on the first day of minicamp
and he's still not here
because that's a mandatory thing.
Which is in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. But if he's not under contract, he's under no obligation to be here. So I think it's something we're talking about today.
It'll die down for the next
2 weeks, and then minicamp comes up again. I think it'll be topic number 1.
Well, in the meantime, here's what we're going to be discussing then between day 1 of OTAs and day 6 of OTAs next Thursday before they do turn the page to that mandatory vet minicamp. I talked to a few of the receivers today, Ray, especially Robert Woods, who he is initially an afterthought when he signs here after the trade of George Pickens. Now he kind of leaps to the top of, it's anybody's ball game who's going to be that number 2 receiver in this group behind DK Metcalf. And from the sounds of it from Woods, from the sounds of it from Roman Wilson, I know Chris Carter was in with Calvin Austin. I don't think any of those guys are looking at it as we're all competing to be WR2. It's more of just we want to form a cohesive group here that can help our quarterback, whoever that may be.
And they're all different kinds of players, right? Like Calvin Austin brings a different skill set than what Robert Woods does at this stage of his career. So with Woods, you have the experience, you have the guy who's played a lot of football. With Roman Wilson, you really have a guy who has a lot of potential, a lot of talent.
But hasn't played really any football. He has a few snaps against the Raiders last year in Las Vegas.
And only a few more practice reps.
And he probably wasn't even fully healthy by that point, but they were going through it a little, and I'm sure they wanted to at least get him on
Yeah.
the field for a taste if he was good enough to go.
Yeah, so you get these questions as much as I do. What's the biggest weakness on this team, or the biggest question on this team other than quarterback? To me, it's the receiver situation, because I feel like once Aaron Rodgers does sign, they're probably going to bring in another guy, maybe a guy he's familiar
Potentially,
with, who could fill out the roster.
Yeah, and then you've got some of the down the liners who have been around, Ben Skoranek, Scotty Miller, players like even Brandon Johnson, who was on the practice squad last year but has NFL experience under his belt. So they've kind of got some contingency plans, but until one of these guys really steps up or takes that opportunity and runs with it, there are going to be questions from the outside about, is this one of the weaker receiving cores in the league?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Calvin Austin produced a lot last year. You look at it, he set career highs in receptions, yardage, and touchdowns. But when you look at it from just an overall perspective, he doesn't project as a number 2 receiver. He's 5'8", he's a buck 80.
He's always going to have to overcome that.
Yeah. So people kind of like pigeonhole him as a slot receiver, or a guy who's not going to be a quote unquote starter, even though he put up some nice numbers last year. So for me, we went through a lot of the names. I'm watching Calvin Austin this spring. I'm watching Roman Wilson. I want to see what those guys can bring to the table in different roles.
And I did talk to Robert Woods for a little off to the side. He says he's got plenty of gas, plenty of juice left in the tank. Wouldn't expect him to say otherwise, but he did smile and laugh a little. And I said, well, your opportunity became a lot more after they turned around and traded George Pickens a couple weeks after signing you. So we'll see how that. And he said he doesn't have a sense of where he is in the pecking order on the depth chart right now. His numbers were way down last year in Tennessee, of course, but he said that was more not having much of a role carved out there with the Titans. So stay tuned. I think when you're doing football in shorts, you can always glean a little bit more about the skill position guys and the pass catchers than you do some of the other ones we mentioned, Troy Fautanu, Broderick Jones, even though we know a lot of this season is going to hinge on their development as well.
Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about the offensive line, I think, as we progress throughout the spring. I think the biggest storyline there, Broderick Jones finally moving back to left tackle where he played at Georgia. I don't want to say he played out of position, but he did the Steelers a solid by being their right tackle the last 2 years.
Yeah, he never complained, but I would say he was always pretty open that he's more comfortable on the other side.
Yeah, and listen, Troy Fautanu really is going to be as long as he stays healthy, Brian, he's going to be one of the top right tackles in the league. They need him to stay healthy. They need Broderick Jones to take the next step and become that franchise left tackle.
Well, for Ray Fittipaldo, I'm Brian Batko. For Chris Carter on the ones and twos, thanks for tuning in again. OTAs are ramping up. We'll be here with a lot more live videos, a lot more content. Keep an eye out for that on postgazette.com.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.